Well, good afternoon, everybody. We are so happy to be here with again with Dr. Steve Hart and Jennifer Lutz. Dr. Steve Hart is Langston University in Oklahoma. He retired, but he is working still there. He's in his office now, and we are so thankful for having you here. And Jennifer Lutz, she's an economist, extension MU, and she knows a lot. And also thank you, Dr. Acharya Mohan. Also, he is extension state specialist here at Lincoln University, as me as a state extension. So we're welcoming to this topic today. So I don't want to take more time, so we will allow to Dr. Steve Hartley, Jennifer, to start. Just remembering, we are going to have some polls during the presentation. So be ready to answer those ones. And also in the YouTube channel, in the next email I will send you, there are already the other three talks that we have had. So if you miss any of them, you can go over there and just look on the one, or if you miss part of the presentation and you want to go again on it, so you can do it. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Homero. We're going to be talking about basically economics, minimizing winter cost and farm cost. Then looking at management. We're not going to tell you how to do things. We're going to give you some suggestions and some ideas, and hopefully encourage you to think through what you're doing, that you've been doing for the last several years, and see if it might be profitable for you to change things perchance. Such things as when you kid, what kind of wintering program you have and the cost associated with it, and when you wean animals. First thing is, why do you have sheep or goats? We've got some hobbyists, some people that show animals. We've got people that sell registered animals. We've got people using sheep and goat to control vegetation. It may be a retirement enterprise that you can maybe make a little money at it, and gives you a reason to get out and walk around and keeps you limber. Or maybe you just like animals. Some people that have sheep or goats have 9 different species of animals because they just like animals. The reason that you have animals affects how much time you're going to put into their management. For instance, someone that just has them for vegetation control is not going to put near as much time into animal management as a hobby or a show person. The amount of money you put into management and the times of breeding and kidding. Show animals, of course, have to be born certain seasons to fit the show class that they're being shown in. Excuse me. People buying registered animals like them big, which means they're born early or need to be born early. Some producers run the buck or ram in year-round. I know one producer that has a contract with a local diner to provide lamb year-round, so he runs the ram in year-round so that he has animals to market year-round. Generally, you want to time kidding or lambing based on when you want to sell the animals and on how big you want the animals to be at sale time. We're going to kind of contrast the season of kidding or lambing, whether you do it in the winter, like December, January, or when you do it in the summer, say April, May time of the year. When we do it in the winter, animals, of course, have increased nutritional needs when you feed hay, so we're going to have to feed more hay. Then summertime, we have increased nutritional needs when the animals are on forage, so they can help themselves to the forage, assuming there's plenty of pasture there for them. Winter lambing or kidding, parasite pressure is lower. Your haemorrhagis don't have parkas, so they, in fact, the really cold weather will kill the larvae on the field. However, you still have some cool season types of parasites that can cause you problems. In the summer, our friend haemorrhagis is a tropical worm and really likes the warm weather, so he causes a lot more problems then, and that can actually reduce kid size depending on your parasite control program. When you lamb or kid in the winter, it requires some sort of shelter, whereas when you do it in the summer, it doesn't require shelter. You can lamb or kid in the pasture. So you don't have to clean pens, you don't have to haul water to individual pens, you don't have to move animals in and out of pens. They can take care of themselves. In the winter, you have higher milk fat, the babies grow faster. In the summer, the milk fat's lower, probably due to the summer heat, and the babies will grow slower. In the winter, babies will be ready for market sooner or larger at marketing, whereas in the summer, babies may be ready for marketing later or may be smaller at marketing. Okay, we're going to look at the seasonal lamb prices here. And this is for feeder lambs. I should point out, many people will be selling feeder lambs instead of finished lambs. We're talking about lambs that will be 60 to 90 pounds, depending on your breed and your market. And you'll notice the market peaks here in February, whereas Easter will usually be towards the end of March or early April then. And so it peaks earlier because these animals need to be fed for a couple of months to make the Easter market. And you'll notice after Easter, the price declines then. A lot of this is due to the Texas producers, which lamb or kid around January time of the year. It's a lot warmer down in Texas than it is in Missouri this time of year. And so they're marketing their animals then during the summer. And so we have an excess supply for the market. And so naturally the price declines. After the animals work their way through the market then in October then, late October, November, we see the prices begin to climb as animal numbers decrease relative to demand, and so the price does increase.
I might make a quick comment if you go back one there, Steve.
Okay.
So one way to read this is that one is average. So that's the average price for the year. And so if you were to sell your animals, say in June, you're selling just over 10% lower. The prices in June are roughly 10% lower than they are for the average for the year. However, if you're selling in, say, February, the prices are roughly, well, I don't know, 13 to 14% higher than the average for the year. So that's kind of how you read these charts. Anything above the red line is above the average for the year, and anything below the red line is below the average for the year. I went ahead and threw the 2022 average annual price for feeder lambs out of the San Antonio market, and it was $278 per hundredweight, or $2.78 a pound, whichever way you like to look at that. Go ahead, Steve.
Yes, Jennifer, and also another point relative to this is an average over 4 years. There is some fluctuation from year to year between markets, but most of the markets generally will follow this pattern from year to year. Okay, if we look at the goat market, and this would be for 40 to 60 pounds slaughter goats then, we see here that the price does peak then around the time of Easter. Then when all of the kids from Texas January kidding hit the market, we see the bottom drop out of the market. Frank Pinkerton refers to it as the June swoon. And basically, animals keep coming into the market from Texas, which has over half of the goats. And so it really, they really control the market. And then basically work through the surplus of animals then by November, and the price then will increase and rise steadily until we get to Easter. Okay, we'll take time for the poll then.
Okay, I will go with the first one. Are you reading it? Yeah, the people is answering now. Ah. Yeah, like a 50%, almost. Almost everyone. Okay. Do you want to comment?
Basically, the amount of fat tends to be higher in winter, and we get a little better growth on our animals then during the winter time.
Okay, I will stop sharing. Go ahead with the presentation.
Okay, are we ready to go ahead, Jennifer?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Basically, your feed costs are the most significant factor in determining profit, and these are out-of-the-pocket costs. Many other costs are not out of the pocket, but definitely our feed costs are. We purchase hay, we purchase grain to feed our animals. Stored feed costs are much higher than the cost of grazing or browsing. Basically, when you take forage on a pasture and you wrap it up into a round bale, by the time it gets fed, you have tripled the cost of the forage. Wintering costs vary with the number of animals and their nutritional needs, which are based on stage of production. Our growing and lactating animals require more nutrition than dry animals because they've got to takes extra protein and energy to make milk or to grow a fetus. Animals with higher nutritional needs in winter generally have higher wintering feed costs because they require more supplement, better quality hay, and more hay. Hay bale size also affects wintering costs. Small bales, your small square bales, which are handy, cost more than per pound of feed than the big round bales. One easy, sure way to reduce wintering cost is reduce the number of animals that you winter. Cull the does are used that did not produce a saleable animal last year. Cull those that have had problems, wormy animals. Remember, your wormy animals also spread worms to other animals. They contaminate the pasture. Animals with CL, cases lymphadenitis, or cheesy gland, whatever you want to call it, they can spread this to other animals. Those with mastitis, which they can spread it to other animals, but also may result in a blind udder half then and have to raise one of the kids or lambs artificially. Foot rot's another problem that spreads around. Also, old animals. There is a limit to how long you can keep an animal before they start having problems. And so you need to cull those girls. And cull animals that do not thrive under your management. There are some animals that genetically are unsuited to your management. They don't do well. They cause problems. They need to be on somebody else's farm. So cull them. Culling can make your management a lot easier, your herd healthier and more productive. Since small ruminants have a high reproductive rate, we can afford to be more aggressive in our culling than, say, we could with cattle.
I always say too that we should cull those animals that misbehave, you know, whether they're aggressive animals or sometimes it's just the really curious animals. So I had a goat at one time that she learned to get through the fence, and she would stand on the fence and let the whole stinking herd out. And so unfortunately, even though she was one of my friendly animals, she needed to be culled because I couldn't keep the other animals home because she learned to let them out of the fence, which is problematic.
Yes, Jennifer, very good point. Those problem animals, we don't have to mess with them, and they'll make our life easier if we send them down the road. Winter feeding days will vary based on your location, forage types, and stocking rates. For instance, there are longer winters in the northern part of Missouri as compared to the southern part of Missouri. Most will tend to have your cool season fescue, then that start growing earlier than warm season grasses. A few people, especially in southern Missouri, will have basically some of your warm season grasses then, such as Bermuda grass. But your warm season grasses start growing later in the year, and so, your cool season grasses, which start earlier, they will decrease your winter feeding days because they provide forage earlier. Farms with lower year-round stocking rates will be able to stockpile forages, and we can use these stockpiled forages to decrease our winter feeding days. There are many different winter feeding scenarios, probably over 1,000, and you have to pick the one that fits your situation. And your situation includes your equipment. You may or may not have equipment to move large round bales. Some things you may not have the labor to do, and depends on your value for animal care, how you think they ought to be cared for or fed, and also economics is a factor. For instance, if you have 4 or 5 goats, feeding a round bale is not practical. Limit feeding big bales will not work if you don't have the time to let the animals in and take them out. You don't need to feed sheep or goats grain on the ground. You're going to lose some of it. They won't pick it all up. You need to use feeders. Large bales are cheaper than small bales, but require equipment to move. Then, basically, if you have elevated round bale feeder, it requires a tractor and labor to put the round bale in the feeder and move the feeder as necessary. There are round bale feeders that feed the round bale on the ground, and basically a pickup with a hay stinger on it is adequate for moving the bales and putting them in it. Small square bale feeder requires daily labor to put hay in the feeder and to clean the feeder. And another problem is square bales have to be stored under cover in contrast to round bales. So that requires some sort of shed. Okay, we've got a poll here.
Okay, I go with the next one. Winter cost. Just read carefully and select one of those answers. Almost done. 2 or 3 people more. Okay, good. You want to comment, Dr. Steve?
Okay, well, obviously small square bales of hay cost more per pound than large bales. And, you know, for the first choice, we talked about that when you take pasture and you wrap it up in the hay bale, you tripled your cost. The third thing there, culling in the fall decreases your feed cost because you don't have to winter those animals. And dry does and ewes, they have the lowest nutritional needs of all the animals.
Okay.
Okay, when do you wean? 90 days. Some people wean at 8 weeks, actually. 150 days, 180 days. Well, it depends on breed, nutrition, and your marketing desires. You know, if we're marketing feeder kids, we only have to get them to 30 to 40 pounds. If we're marketing slaughter kids, heavier, anywhere from 40 to 70, all the way up to 90 pounds. For feeder lambs, then 30 to 50 pounds is a feeder lamb. Many of y'all will be marketing feeder lambs. Slaughter lambs are definitely heavier, 80 to 110 pounds. How long does it take for your animal to get to the desired market weight? You can wean them and sell them as feeders. You can wean them, feed them in a dry lot, and cope with some of the problems of weaning. You know, coccidiosis is a big problem that you have in the dry lot when you wean. And of course, for the first week or two, they don't gain any weight. But then when they start going, they'll do well, and you can sell them as slaughter animals. And then you can wean. After weaning, you can feed your animals on pasture and sell them later as slaughter animals or feeder animals according to their body weight.
We got a quick question about a dry lot. Can you describe what a dry lot is for us?
Okay, a dry lot is when you separate you have a group of animals that you separate, you don't allow them pasture or maybe minimal pasture, but basically you're feeding them grain and some hay, trying to get them to gain weight rapidly then. So basically these animals, the emphasis is not on grazing, but it's on grain to try to get them to market weight as quickly as we can.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay. When we wean animals and sell them as feeders, that's the shortest time between birth and market. We also have them on our farm for the shortest time, but also feeders weigh less, and we generally get less income from them. We can wean them, feed them in dry lot, sell them as slaughter animals. They are on stored feed longer. We're going to have more money tied up in them. We can wean them, feed them on pasture, and for a good while, and then sell them as slaughter animals later on. They're on the farm longer. They may be able to utilize rapid spring forage growth if timed right. I have a question in there. Do female offspring need to be weaned? We're talking about, kids or lambs. Do female lambs or kids need to be weaned? And I'm asking that question because in the beef cattle area, some people are working with not weaning their calves, their female calves. Basically, weaning decisions, we want to send as many pounds to market as we can cost effectively. If we've got to put too much grain into them, it won't be cost effective. Early weaning, we're going to require feeding them some most likely, and we're going to have some health problems, and it may not be the most profitable and requires more management and time. Low stress weanings work well for some producers. By low stress weaning, usually these animals will be greater than 90 days of age, and we'll wean them across electric fence. most of the trauma of weaning is due to the physical separation of mom. If they are able to see one another through the fence, then there's much less stress. And after several days, they forget about mom and go off in their own group then. And so you don't see the problems that you usually do around weaning, such as coccidiosis and being off feed. Late weaning and sending them to the auction is the cheapest way we can accomplish this. Then we don't have to wean and sell them at 90 days. Maybe we'll leave them on there to 160, 180 days so that we get a bigger animal and they're ready to be sold to the auction then. Okay. Basically, replacement kid management's a challenge. And we also, young male animals, they can start breeding at a young age, and so we've got to sell them, separate them, or castrate them. So that's another headache that we have to sort through and make a decision on what we're going to do.
We have a comment in the chat also, while Homero is getting the poll ready.
Okay.
Talking about how they wean in order to separate adults so they can breed the adults back to the same sire and cover the young with a different sire to add genetic diversity.
Yes. Is this a statement or a question?
It's a statement. It's a
Okay,
statement.
yes.
And what do you think about that statement, Dr. Steve?
Well, yes, you do need to, you don't need to breed the kids or lambs to their dads. You do need different buck or ram to breed them to. And so it does require you usually to have 2 different breeding pens minimum, which is a hassle, but it's a necessary hassle.
Yeah. And if you are like it's like to buy from somebody else to get from somebody else, or if you are getting your own replacement, your males, should be like a different lines of fathers and mothers, so you can manage it like a 2 different groups, or what is the recommendation?
Yes, it's best to shop around and ask people that have bought rams or bucks from different producers and see how they like them. And then you have to go select your own. And basically, we select them on what they look like. We can't tell what their genetics are necessarily by looking at them. And basically, unfortunately, it's 3 to 4 years after you have a ram or a buck before you know how good their progeny really are.
Yeah.
And so
And you cannot use it anymore sometimes because you have now the daughters and the granddaughters and things like that. Yeah.
yes, this is true. It's a problem that you have to cope with.
Yeah.
I might add too that we do have some buck tests or ram tests around the country. Do need to be conscientious of what they're testing for. And so at these tests, oftentimes producers will send their young male animals to these tests to see how well they gain. Maybe it's on pasture or a feed trial, and also looking at their parasite tolerance or resistance. And just kind of watching these animals in a mixed group of animals from multiple different farms, and then comparing them on how they do in these tests. And some people like to use replacements out of these tests because they feel like they've been proven in some fashion or another that they're either parasite resistant or they grow well under stress or different things like that.
Very good point, Jennifer. And more of our buck and ram tests are conducted under practical conditions where they use pasture as a major source of their nutrients instead of grain. And so it makes these animals more applicable to the real life world. And data on parasites is quite valuable. So you can buy animals that are superior in parasite resistance then, and will do good on the farm.
And hopefully pass that on to their offspring.
Yes.
Okay, I will go with the poll number 3 about winning decisions. And I think we have very smart attendees today. So let's see. We have 17, 18, 80% of the people. Okay, I will be ending now the poll. You want to comment it?
Okay, weaning decisions should be based on when and what we're trying to produce and the market that we're trying to hit. The shortest time between birth and market is to sell feeder animals. And our feeder kids, we're talking about 30 to 40 pounds of weight, and not the 75 to 90 pounds of weight is a slaughter weight. And young male animals do breed at young age, especially goats. And you have to get those bucks out of there when they're about 12 weeks old, or else you're going to have some unwanted pregnancies.
Okay, thank you.
Feeding a concentrate-based feed to kids or lambs, creep feeding. The concept is we're going to feed a high-energy concentrate to kids or lambs to increase the rate of growth and get them to market sooner. The kids or lambs have access to feed, and I should point out that, okay, these kids or lambs, they're on their mother's milk, and we're adding grain to mother's milk. Then the mature animals, their mothers do not have access to this. Usually we accomplish this with a creep feeding gate that basically has holes through which the kids or lambs can go through and their mothers cannot. It's an intentional increase in nutrition to allow animals to realize their genetic potential for weight gain. To be successful, creep-fed animals need to be marketed during seasonal price highs. Basically, that's because the cost of grain that we're putting into the animals. If we're going to realize a profit, and I should point out that definitely goats are not near as efficient as sheep on gaining weight when we creep feed them. And we're going to have more money tied up in them by the time we get to market. So if we don't creep feed, we can use cheap pasture then instead of expensive grain then, and be more profitable at marketing. We mentioned female replacements. What do we do with them after they're weaned? Do we put them back with their dams after a month, assuming their dams have dried up? Then the question is, what do we do with them while their dams are being bred? And we usually don't want to breed them. They can be run with bred does, but while they're being bred, we have to run them separately. They may make acceptable gains on good pasture, be breeding size at 1.5 years of age. Okay. Question about the percent lower efficiency of creep feed utilization. Basically, with goats, it takes about roughly 6 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of body weight gain. And so this is not near as efficient as cattle or sheep. And I should point out, we mentioned that you need to have a fairly good, or animals with a high capacity to gain weight. We're talking about your black-faced sheep, but especially your Dorper hair sheep. We're talking about Boer goats, those that have potential to gain weight rapidly when we give them extra nutrition. Otherwise, some of your slower growing breeds won't gain enough weight to be economical to pay for the feed.
I might add, Steve, that it's not just a lower efficiency of creep feed. Like goats naturally grow slower than sheep, regardless of how much nutrition we're putting in front of them. They grow slower than sheep do. Goat kids do.
Yes, Jennifer, and that probably is a factor in their poor feed efficiency.
Probably.
Okay, basically getting back to our female replacements. Some producers breed them at 9 months of age. However, these animals may have a higher nutritional requirement than while gestating as compared to their bred dams. Nutritional demands are highest for growing animals, lactating animals, and late bred animals. If an animal is growing or lactating, their demands are much greater than our dry adult animals. Going to switch gears a little bit and talk about annual enterprise budget examples. And I should point out these are budgets in Missouri that are on the Missouri website, and there will be a reference that you can get to these. And I should point out budgets are a good thing to go with, but they have to be modified with your experience and with the cost of your inputs. The inputs that are put into a budget one year may or may not apply to the next year, because if you have a drought, forage or hay is going to be much more expensive. Grain may change due to government. Grain prices may be changed due to government policies or due to drought in certain parts of the world. So, but we need some place to start, and then you can customize it as you push your pencil on it to your conditions. Meat goat budget's designed to reflect the economic cost and returns on a 50 doe herd, winter kidding, and we're going to contrast that with later on a summer kidding herd. Winter kidding, we're talking about December, January. So that means you're going to have these animals in a barn, in a jug at least some of the time, be hauling water for individual pens for them. And we're marketing these kids between 50 and 60 pounds in, say, April time of the year before the market bottoms out. And these have to be growthy animals to make these targets. Has high production risk due to summer breeding challenges, because if you're kidding in December, you're going to have to be breeding in July when it is hot. Animals are not very interested in breeding at this time of the year, and so that can cause some problems then. You may get a reduced kid crop due to this. You have to know your animals. There are some lines of animals that do well on breeding in winter, and there's some that do poorly. Assumptions made, we've got 50 does kidding December and January. We've got 150% lamb crops. We've got 75 kids that we can sell, 54 twins and 21 singles. Kids are sold in April, approximately 120 days old. Market weight, single 60 pounds and twins 50 pounds. And goats can make these gains. The growthier breed, Boer, can make them. Kids are on dams, pasture, and 15 days of creep feed in March and April. Okay, here's the budget here. And basically our income or returns, we're going to sell those kids. We've got some heavy kids that are 60 pounds. We've got lighter kids that are 50 pounds, and the prices that are there. We're going to sell cull does. Basically, doe after 6 years of life, we're going to cull her then. And you know, the price of cull does varies throughout the year. And so we're getting some money from her. And then cull bucks, also we got some money from them. So our income is basically $266 per doe then from the market. And you'll have to pencil your own figures in, and you know it varies from year to year. Okay, our expenses is going to take about 3/4 of an acre to produce these animals, and we're assuming that this is fescue forage since we're kidding in the winter, and we're assuming that we're stockpiling that forage so that we have forage for those animals. We have hay that we're feeding them, a certain amount of supplement that we're feeding them, and an amount of mineral. And so we see here, and I guess I don't have the total expenses dollars per doe here.
Yeah, so these are in dollars per doe and dollars per enterprise. So the dollars per doe is, this is the cost, this is the income per one doe on this herd, and some of the expenses per one doe on this herd. And then the dollars per enterprise would be the whole herd. That's maintaining all 50 of these animals for the year and maintaining the 75 kids from birth to market. And I think the next slide has our we've got one more enterprise to go through, and then the following slide after that kind of compares the two.
Okay, question was asked about, okay, we've got 1.5 kids being produced per doe. And that's normally about what we expect. We didn't allow anything. We assumed that 100% of the does were bred.
Yeah, this is 150% animals to market. So it was actually 157% kidding rate. And then we had a little bit of death loss on the babies, but between birth and marketing. Does that answer your question, Sherry? You might go ahead, Steve, until we.
Okay, this is three-quarters of an acre for doe, and this is going to vary with the land that you have and your forage stand that you have and the productivity of it. Okay, then we've got a meat goat budget for kidding later on in March, April time of the year. Marketing 50 to 60 pound kids in July and August then. So the price is going to be lower. Takes advantage of the spring forage production and natural breeding season. It does have a high risk during marketing then. During the summer, how low are you going to go? Okay, again, we're assuming 50 does, 79 kids sold, a little bit better reproduction since they're bred in their natural season. Kids sold in July and August, approximately 140 days old. Then, little lower rate of weight gain. And then we have, they're on pasture, 15 days of creep feed. So we're going to go see the numbers then. Okay, we can see here that our income dollars per doe has been reduced by almost $40 per doe, and our expenses are going to be roughly about the same then. So it's not quite as profitable right in this part of the production cycle. But on the other hand, we're not having to jug animals in the winter, be out there with them, to feed them, not having to water them in their pens. And so it's a much lower labor input than for us. So depending on the amount of time you have and your goals, this, even though this is a less profitable scenario, may be a much better scenario for you due to labor considerations. Okay, and here this kind of summarizes what our income is, how many kids are sold, and the average price then, and how much hay and supplement it takes, which this is going to vary depending on where you are in Missouri. North is compared to south, and depends on the size of goats you have, etc. But this gives us a framework then to start from and to work with and to think on where we lie on it. Okay, we'll have the link here a little bit later on for the enterprise budget spreadsheet.
And Dr. Steve, can you repeat, please, the months for early kidding and late kidding?
Okay, early kidding was December, January. Late kidding was March, April.
Okay, that means that the breeding was 5 months before of that time.
Yes, would have been in the fall, which is the natural season for breeding. And you would expect kind of both a better, higher conception rate and more kids per doe. Okay, here is the link then for the ag budgets.
I will make a comment too that if you follow this link, and I'll put this link in the chat as well, so maybe you can copy and paste it then. But at these links, there's also the spreadsheets that you can model your own budgets.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Okay, wintering costs need to be controlled for our profitability. Replacement cost is high, and we need to keep breeding animals that last well, both breed and keep animals that last longer in the herd and increase our profit. Pasture costs are highly dependent on your situation. If you're co-species grazing, such as you have cattle on the pasture and you're using goats for brush and weed control, pasture costs are very low then for the goats then, since your cattle are paying for the pasture. And so that can be very profitable. The number of kids is a very important determination of profit. And your decisions should be made with your enterprise objectives in mind and with thoughts for your animal's well-being. And the question is, what can you change that would improve your goat enterprise? In conclusion, management affects animals' productivity and their expenses and the resulting profit. Decisions have to be made within your enterprise objectives, your available labor, and other resources that you have. And I'll close with a quote from Yvonne Swede Tucker: "The secret to making money in goats is to keep your wallet closed."
That's a pretty good one. So,
Okay, do we have questions?
let's see if we can get us on the screen here.
Okay.
There we go. And then any other questions you guys have?
Oh, if water can get through it, so can a goat. But actually, you can train goats. I've got electric fence that my goats can jump over. And they did in the summer when it's dry, but now that it's wet, they don't jump over it. So they kind of, it's surprising. After a while, goats get used to a fence and will stay in pretty good, provided they have adequate feed.
That is the key, right? And
Yes.
not even just adequate feed for goats, it's preferential feed. It's what they want to eat.
Yes.
Because if the neighbors have something they want to eat, even if you have a lot of food for them, they may still find their way to the neighbors.
Yeah, like fruit trees and
Right.
okay, there was a question and I missed it.
It was asking what is the mechanism, why is milk fat higher in the winter than in summer?
Okay, summer provides some heat stress for the animals, and that's probably why milk fat is lower then.
And Sherry, I don't know if we completely know the mechanism behind this. But I do know a lot of our milking goat dairies that are testing their milk fat will say the same thing, and it's not even necessarily breed specific. That they're seeing in multiple different breeds of dairy goats that milk fat is higher in the winter and makes better cheese in the winter than it does in the summer. So these were cheese makers that I've been hearing a lot of this from.
What about the yield of the milk, winter versus summer? I mean, it's difficult because sometimes it are different animals, but it's not like that you can have the same dairy goat in the winter and the summer. But because we measure very much the fat as a percentage, but the percentage is according to the amount of milk that the animal is milking. So I have been seeing all those data and graphics about the percentage of milk and I mean of fat in the milk, and but it's very related to the volume, to the pounds of milk, to the quarts of milk, and sometimes will be only because the yield that they are producing, and that will be very related also to the feeding of the animals in winter and in the spring. So I think it's a good question that we should be looking on.
Sounds like a good research project for you, Homero.
Yeah, we have a very smart people here. I'm scared.
Along that line, Homero, we actually had some fescue with other cool season grasses here, different pastures.
Yeah.
And one year our kids on the fescue waned less. And one particular year, 1 year out of 3, they were definitely lower in weight.
Wow.
And I think it was the fescue toxicity,
Okay.
which doesn't happen every year. But we did see it very definitely that year. We had replicates. It was replicated 4 times. So we were pretty sure, and we had enough animals in each pen, like 8 animals. So we were pretty sure that what we saw was true.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to answer Stephanie's question here, and I'm gonna share my screen to try to show this graph. See if I can get this done. Move all our heads out of the way here. All right. So Stephanie, I've lost chat now. Dang it. My controls are all gone. There we go. So Stephanie, you asked how the price per animal equates to the amount per pound. And what would I say? I would say that because this is based on dollars per doe. What we're seeing here is for every doe in the herd, we had 0.38 heavy kids and 1.2 light kids. And that's just a function of the kidding rate. And you could see that they were at 50 and 60 pounds. And there was the dollars per unit here. So the 50-pound kids were selling at $2.38. And I believe this is the late kidding budget. $2.38 a pound, and the heavy kids were selling at $2.34 a pound. Does that help, Stephanie? And if we look at the winter one, the early kidding, it was same type of thing. So on the heavy kids, because we had just again that function, we had 0.42 heavy kids per doe in the herd and 1.8 light kids. same thing, 50 and 60 pounds. 50 pounders were at $2.99 a pound, and the 60 pounders were at $2.84 a pound when they went to market. And so essentially, this is just showing that if we can get them to market sooner, that because of those, the unit is the pound. This column here is, ooh, I've made a mess. This column here is the pound, the units. So dollars per unit is dollars per the unit, which is dollars per pound, depending on here. So this one, the 32.55 would be dollars per acre. So hopefully that helps. And I'd be happy to chat with anybody about these budgets if you want to learn more or try to model your own farm. I'd be happy to try to help you do that.
Dr. Hart, there are a few questions like what type of hay is best nutritionally versus price for those with limited pasture?
Okay, say again.
That's in the chat box. What type of hay is best nutritionally?
Okay, it really depends on your need and the quality of the hay. And I'm a real advocate in hay testing so that you know what you have, because hay quality can vary greatly, and that affects then how much supplement that you do need. And also, and the previous seminar that we had addressed hay problems then. But one needs to try to find good hay, and good is a relative term, and sometimes availability is probably more important than quality. Just getting a hold of some hay, any hay, and what's available locally, you probably can't afford to have hay trucked for 100 miles. You probably have to get hay within a 15 to 20 mile radius to be practical, unless you have a large number of animals.
And I agree with that from a nutritionist standpoint and from an economist standpoint. You really have to price your hay based on the nutrition it is. And what I mean by that is if you're being charged $70 a roll and then you figure out the nutrition, sometimes it is cost effective to compare the cost of hay to the cost of grain. And sometimes we can increase grain. We still have to feed hay. We have to have that roughage in their diet. But sometimes we can feed some grain to offset the cost of our hay from a economic standpoint. And that varies year to year on which is cheaper, to be honest with you.
There are a couple of questions in the chat.
Yeah, let me
I'll handle it, Mohan. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just to add. Sometimes what I have done is just to price all the different options, like how much is the cost per pound of dry matter or the forage, but also how much is the pound of crude protein, of energy, TDN. So in the way that you can make a comparison of the nutrition, just to say, okay, the crude protein is even the hay is very cheap, but the crude protein is very expensive because your percentage of protein is very low. So you have to buy a lot of hay to get this protein. So and you can make a decision if you need more protein or you need more energy. You have all that list of the price for yield, for protein, for energy. So will be a very good decision. So our next talk will be Dr. Ken Coffey from University of Kansas, and we are going to be talking a lot of how to treat attack for the feed and also balancing ration. So I think will be interesting. Go ahead with the questions, Jennifer, please.
So there was another question here talking about that their kids grow on pasture at a rate of 0.18 to 0.35 pounds per day, which is lower than what's in the budget. They talked about having boers. They've tried to use boers and they do get a higher average daily gain, but they're having trouble keeping them around because of the parasite issues. And so really they're trying to figure out how they can increase income without increasing costs. And I might ask Sherry, how long have you had your goats for? And the reason I ask that is because a lot of times we can look at nutrition on our average daily gain. And it also depends on how old these animals are when we're figuring out the average daily gain, because from birth to 90 days, we've got a higher average daily gain than we do from birth to 150 days, say. And so that varies. But the other part that I would say is keeping production records, keeping those that produce the best, culling those that don't produce as good as the others. And slowly you will make your way to increasing income, increasing the size of your animals without necessarily increasing a lot of costs. Now, the bigger animals we have, the more they eat. So we will increase some costs, but we should increase income as well. And hopefully that oversees the increased in cost. So, Dr. Hart, do you have something to add to that?
Yes, well, it depends, you know, if those are goats that are, say, doing vegetation management, you know, nutrition is somewhat limited. It is cheap. And basically you may have to keep your animals for, say, 180 days before you sell them to get them to 40, 45 pounds.
Yep. So Sherry made a comment that they've raised them for 15 years, have selected for brush control goats so that they thrive there. And the lower average daily gain works well for them.
Yes.
Okay, is there another question? I think we are on time.
And I think overall, the point of the last two talks is to say that, you know, all of our farms are different. We all do different things and we all make it work for us. So if you're just getting into sheep and goats, then one of the big things I would say is visit a lot of farms, see how they do things and take away what will work for you and leave what doesn't, right? And ultimately the animals will tell us if we're doing a good job or not. So that's my wrap up 2 cents.
Yeah. What is Goat Farm Stores?
Catherine, are you volunteering to give us a tours? She asked if we organize goat farm tours.
Well, we are going to have a new project, the North Central SARE project for 3 years. And we are going to be visiting a lot of different farms in the next 3 years in different states. So all of you are invited. So we can be, we are going to have field days in different farms in different places where we are going to have also webinars, but we are going to have speakers on the farms and also with the experience of the farmer. And so I think we can do some kind of that, yeah.
The lady that's in Kansas City, there is a goat producer in Kansas, about 60 to 70 miles southwest of her, that has a fairly good number of goats, and he's been in goats for 20 years. His last name is Christensen, and she could contact me if she wants a contact with him.
Okay, I will send the contact information of Dr. Steve Hart and also Jennifer Lutz, and of course our information.
Oh, she knows Greg Christensen. Okay.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so Dr. Steve Hart, thank you so much for your time, for the last class and this one, and for the one that we are going to have the following years with you and and Jennifer Lutz. Thank you so much. We are having a webinar this week with Jennifer Lutz, David Middleton, and another person from Foxtail. Is a farmer that he sells some lamb cuts of meat. So the idea is to be talking about the pricing of the meat for direct market. So I will send an email tonight or tomorrow morning inviting for that webinar. So thank you so much, and we appreciate for your time and our following webinar or topic for this certificate will be on January the 8th. Am I right, Mohan?
The next will be on January 8th, and the topic will be on reading feed tags and using vitamins and minerals.
January the 8th with Dr.
8th.
Ken Coffey, and January 15th with Dr. Ken Coffey, 4:00 p.m. And will be about nutrition, so everybody is invited. We are going to send information, and just have a very happy holidays. We don't see you again, but we wait you for this Tuesday webinar. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you. Thank you.
Bye.